Amazing. Well, let's get started with this awesome podcast. I've got an absolute great guest on the show today. Really excited just to dig a little bit deeper, find out the story behind the man. But I'd like to welcome Adeniyi to Wise Wealth Podcast and really start to explore exactly where you've got to, where you are. So if you can, give us all a nice introduction to yourself and where your journey started.
Yes, so my name is Adeniyi Adenubi. You can also call me Adeniyi Adenubi. I'm Nigerian. I started a business, co-founded a business about 14, 15 years ago with a few of my partners. And we grew it from a very small base of less than $100,000 to today, I think about $300 million in a portfolio size. Yes, so that's what I do. I'm an art collector, a bit of a philanthropist, and I have a young family.
Amazing. So let's break that down. You jumped that quite quickly. You said we started with $100,000, and now we've got a portfolio of 300 million. And and I'm an art collector, and I've got a family. So we dodged that one quite quickly. What was the growth like? How did you go from this to a 300 million portfolio, and what sort of time span was that in?
So we started in 2009. A few young guys able to raise some small monies, mainly in Lagos and Nigeria. At the time, the venture market and the angel investing market didn't really exist. You couldn't really raise money from institutional people. There were a few high net worth individuals who would write a check, but not very many. So when we started going around trying to raise money, we couldn't make any money. We couldn't raise any money. So we thought, okay, we have great ideas, we have good energy, we have great experience. What kind of stuff can we do to give us capital, which is what we needed? So we thought we should start businesses that have a float, which is businesses that collect money and invest, and then return money back to investors. And we thought that to do that, you had to have a good corporate governance structure. So from a very small, an early stage, we set up a governance structure that was world-class. We were meeting regularly, we were compliant, we were transparent, we were auditing our books and reporting to our few shareholders then. And through word of mouth, the business grew, and that way we were also able to raise money as we went along. And many of our clients, in terms of either placing money with us or loan clients, also became investors in the business just because the interaction made them just like what they saw, and they were willing to be a part of it.
So I suppose that portfolio, how many sort of companies does that involve now?
Today, I think there are about 38 portfolio companies. There is an asset management company, there's a digital bank, there's a stock brokerage firm, there's hospitality and real estate. It's infrastructure, power, energy. So it's now a diversified investment group, so to speak.
I think the digital banking side of things is probably not a bad shout, really, especially the location that you're in. There's a lot of trouble at the moment, isn't there, with the whole banking structure? I know that we have customers as well from that region, and trying to actually get payments to and from is quite a difficult task for some individuals. So I suppose having a digital bank side of things is probably going to be a big impact on the wider region, isn't it?
Absolutely, and our flagship company, the most retail, the most famous, the most widespread known brand within our portfolio of companies is the digital bank, V-Bank, that's what it's called. You can slap a button on this. It was the first of its kind in this region as well. But you're right. The exciting thing also is that we can see a lot of innovation in that space, using technology to solve people's problems, to solve remittance problems, to solve transport problems, to solve payment problems. It's really exciting to be able to evolve, to see where technology is going and utilizing that technology, specifically solving problems in our local market. So it's been very exciting.
Yeah, no, it sounds it. And to be honest with you, like my background is within the UK stock market, the US stock market, not Nigeria's stock market. So what's that market look like at this moment in time? Is it a booming market? Is it a very early adopting market? What sort of stage is it at?
The Nigerian Stock Exchange has been around for a very long time. I think it was founded in 1958, just before Nigeria got its independence. I think at the time it was called the Lagos Stock Exchange. And like most exchanges around the world, it's gone through its boom and bust cycles. It's quite mature market. It's quite liquid as well. There's a lot of foreign portfolio players that come into the market. Right now, since the new government came into play, there's been some excitement. So we've seen some upward moving trend. But I think that there are not enough young people that are involved in the markets. And I think that is because some of the technology and approach is dated, and there needs to be some innovation in that space, just in the way that we saw in the banking space, just to make registration easier, to make buying and selling easier, and stuff like that. But we like the exchange business also, and just the importance of an exchange to a collective wealth creation for a country. So we're very keen on trying to make that accessible to as many people as possible to participate in the stock market.
I think what you've done, what you've achieved, is no small task. I think it's amazing. Congratulations to yourself. From that 300 million that you've then gone and achieved, has that been from sort of portfolio growth within the business, within cash generating business, or is that 300 million in investors' money that's come into your business to then go and back these 58 companies?
Correct. It's all of it. So some of it is retained earnings and retained profit over time. Some of it is assets that we're managing on behalf of people. A lot of it is the equity base for the company, and some of it is also leverage from banks. We're now a PLC. We're a listed company on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. So it's not a private equity fund, but we have similar approaches in terms of how we approach investing. But our capital is a bit more long-term because we don't have the time frame of 7 to 10 years to return money to LPs. So it gives us a little bit more flexibility to think longer term.
Yeah, for sure. And are the businesses that you're investing in purely in Nigeria?
Mostly, even though we've started expanding to other West African countries, we now have quite a strong holding in Ghana. We're looking at Rwanda. Rwanda is a very exciting market, a very structured market, and very well-regulated market. So we're looking at Rwanda. One of our portfolio companies is doing quite well in Rwanda as well. So we're using that to leverage an expansion. And we're looking at Kenya as well. The East African hub is also quite exciting.
Interesting. And so it's a wide variety of businesses that you have then gone and invested into. It's not specifically one sort of sector.
It's not. We're sector agnostic.
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. So I suppose what's next for what you're doing?
Good question. I think we're in a new era of being a listed company and a public company and kind of maturing. So we need to stay innovating. We need to keep our eyes on the ball. We need to continue to grow the businesses in the portfolio, get as many of them listed or partly sold, strategic exits. But just continue to do what we do, trying to look for alpha returns in a very difficult operating environment. Inflation currently is about 24% or something like that. So it's quite a tough environment. So the idea is just to stay focused and keep our eyes on the ball and continue to grow the businesses.
Oddly enough, and I don't know why, but a large amount of my followers are actually from Nigeria and Africa. I've got no idea.
We're obsessed with wealth.
I have no idea why. I just have such a large following from Africa, and I think it's amazing. I've never done anything in Africa. Maybe I should,
I'm inviting you. Please come to Lagos. You will love it. It's a very exciting city.
I've never thought of going. It's never been on my agenda. But there's so, I'm going to say probably out of like 500,000 followers, I'm going to say that probably at least 60 to 80,000 of them are Nigeria based, and I don't understand how or why, but there's clearly a market there that is definitely interested within the investment space, within the wealth, and within investments, which is it's nice to see.
Absolutely, and I'm not surprised at all. Nigerians are very energetic. They're very smart. They're very keen on learning. And a lot of people are obsessed with like wealth creation and making more money and diversifying income. So it's a very educated population, and it's a very aspiring population. So I'm not surprised that given the theme of your podcast, the number of representation of Nigerians that you have on there. But I'm inviting you. You have to come. If you have that many Nigerian people that listen to your podcast, you have to come see them.
I have to come. I have to come. I've never come, and I think, you know, yeah. Well, thanks for the invite.
Why not? Next year, we'll do that next year.
All right, that sounds good. I'm up for that.
Yeah, the sunshine will also be good.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely up for it. Yeah, I love it. New experience. Why not? You know, it'd probably be weird as well, just bumping into people that, you know, listen to the podcast. And I've never been there.
Correct. You probably have to do like a small gathering, and I'm sure you'd have a huge number of them show up to maybe interview somebody in person or something.
Yeah, that'd be good. So I suppose for people listening, what was your background to get you where you got to? I mean, it's like I said, you started with $100,000. Now, you know, I wouldn't give it a blanket approach, but $100,000 starting in Nigeria is quite a sum of money to get started and then grow into that scale. Where did that come from? Where did your education start in this space, and sort of how did you build that expertise to go, this is what I want to do, and I've got that expertise to go and deliver it?
Okay, so first I'll tell you like how I discovered the world of finance. When I was in secondary school, international school, Ibadan, one of my best friends, his dad was an economist, but he had stopped being an economist, a lecturer, and had become a financier. So through a few people that he employed, he owned strategic investments in the country, part ownership of a bank, an industrial company, making soaps. And I just loved this life, right? I loved the fact that he wasn't doing just one thing. He had exposure to banks, he had exposure to an industrial company, he had exposure to a manufacturing company. And I said, this is what I wanted to be, right? So I also went in the same way and studied like economics and finance later after that, stuff like that, and sociology. And then I was in London for a few years, worked in banking as well. And then in 2009, I met my partners because one of my childhood friends was working with one of them at an investment bank in Lagos. And she told me, oh, this thing you say you want to do, build this investment group or financial services group in Nigeria. I also have someone who is very close to me that says the same things. I think you guys should connect. We connected. He had already also started the movement and had a few partners. His background was in audit, consulting. They worked at KPMG and some of the PwC. And then we came together and came up with a document to try to, you know, raise more money. And that's how we started. So the bulk of that money was our contribution. I think there was like 28 or 31 people initially who used to meet on Sundays to discuss what we wanted to build. And yeah, a lot of those people brought like family and friends, and that's how we were able to get what was the equal of $100,000 at the time. Yeah, and then we did that as a side gig for about maybe 4 or 5 years, and then we were lucky. Our strategy was working out, and we're scaling. And we got to a level where the business revenues could accommodate some of the partners to come in full time, and that's how gradually we all started like being full time in the business.
Sounds like very empowering to the community. So I suppose like you brought the family and friends and community sort of along with you on that journey to get where you are, right?
Absolutely, we're very communal people. So it's natural that you go to them first to support. Yeah. We got many of them.
That's amazing. So before we started recording on the podcast, we spoke briefly about doing philanthropy work. So what philanthropy work are you doing, and how did you get involved in that side?
So currently, I'm more focused on philanthropy in arts and culture. I about 2 years ago launched a foundation called Legacy Arts Foundation, and the idea is for it to support art students in the key art schools in Nigeria. It's taken a long time to get an agreement with the first university, Yaba Tech School of Technology, to have an agreement to sponsor 10 kids every year, pay for the tuition, but also provide the materials for the experiments, provided mentorship with global artists and curators and galleries so that they can start preparing for the big world. So we had our first set this year. We gave them all their letters. It was very exciting, 2 years in the making. So that's very exciting. I also sit as a trustee, GAS Foundation, which is a member of the Yinka Shonibare Foundation. Yinka Shonibare is a British Nigerian artist, CBE. And so that's also a way of giving back and serving the community. The other thing I would like to do would be in education. I would like to name something after my dad, who I lost about 6-7 years ago. And he was a champion of education. It was very important to him. He used to say, if I leave you no inheritance, the best thing I can leave to you is a great education and a great name. And I think he was right. So at some point, we will start that as well, where I'm not sure what we'll do yet, but there will also be something.
I'm sure he'll be very proud if he's looking down and looking at what you've achieved. So I mean, it's quite an inspirational sort of comment from him, that, isn't it? If I can't leave you with any inheritance, so as long as I leave you with a good education, you'll create your own inheritance for your family. And that's
absolutely.
And that's all based off of that education. So that's fantastic.
Right.
No, I love that. I'm a big advocate for education, and I think that there's a huge lack of financial literacy in the current world, and we need to sort of come together and work on that. And I'm looking at putting together some scholarships to make sure that we can actually achieve that and help those lower income bracket individuals to fight against those odds to be able to get the right education. Hopefully end up like a success story like yourself, and leave them with the right education.
Absolutely.
So where did your love come for art? Where did that come from?
So it's very interesting, actually. So now I collect African art, and it's predominantly Nigerian art. And ultimately, I'm expanding my collection to the continent. But I think 70% of my art portfolio is Nigerian art. I've always liked art. I've always visited museums. When you travel to London, you go to Paris, you'd always see these shows. I was very familiar with the blue chip artists, Picassos and Van Goghs and whatnot. And it was just natural. I never really thought about it. And then one day I was just in London, and I was like, wait, there must be African art. There must be contemporary African art. But I don't really know a lot about it. But I can tell you Picasso's history. I can tell you where Henri Matisse lived, or, and I couldn't really tell you maybe a lot about Benemowu or maybe Uche Okeke or Grillo. So I said, I need to change that. So it was like a light bulb moment. So it was a deliberate attempt to then start reading about the history of contemporary African art. And a lot of it was tied to the fight for independence for many of these African nations. And I just became so enthralled by the education of it that naturally it led me to be interested in some of those key artists of the time. And I started collecting them. And then gradually I got into the contemporary world and started collecting from young artists living today. But it's a huge passion. It's near addictive, and it's very costly.
It's something as well, like I say, when I think about African art, I don't know what that looks like. And that's very interesting to say that. Is that just me and my lack of knowledge? Or is that something that's it's not really that widely discussed? I don't know.
I think for a long time it wasn't institutionalized. So what was institutionalized was the traditional African art, which is the bronzes and the masks that you find at the British Museum. But there were artists that were creating contemporary work, abstract sculpting, and doing all these great things. But they weren't really institutionalized. There was not very many galleries or museums that were representing or showing that kind of art. That has changed a lot since the time I started being interested, and it's a good thing. Not near enough, but we're seeing the trajectory change so much. I was in London for Freeze about 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago, and there's a huge African representation at Freeze London 154. So it's changing, and I'm sure that very soon, in a year, next year, a couple of years, it will be something that you will see more often, and it will be a part of the context of the global art conversation.
And obviously, over here, when we think of art, we think of it as an investment. Is it the same sort of thing?
Yeah, well, there are always two categories of collectors. The collectors that just collect. I love it. Doesn't matter. And then the collectors that collect and they wanted to keep value, not because they're chasing a financial gain, but they've just figured out that they're going to spend a whole lot of money over their lifetime collecting. And if you're going to do that, then you're better apply some same financial principles to what you're acquiring, because you want a worthy collection, not just in terms of financial, but also emotional and the story that it represents. But you need to be able to benchmark some value around it. So a lot of the auction houses, Christie's, Sotheby's, Bonhams, Phillips, are now selling contemporary African art. So that's also helps with the pricing and price discovery and stuff like that.
So for people that are listening that are going, how on earth has he managed to achieve all of this? What sort of what would your advice be to those sort of individuals that are listening to your story, your background? And I think coming from Nigeria, I think it's more credit for what you've achieved and the scale that you've achieved. So especially talking to the large audience of people from here that are from Africa that are listening to this, what sort of advice can you give those people that are aspiring and would love to follow in your footsteps?
Yeah, great question and great point. Sometimes I struggle with giving advice just because people are different, situations are always different. But one of the best advice I ever heard or received was from Warren Buffett, and it's very generic, and it just says, invest in yourself. You should be the number one thing that you're investing. So before you start putting money in art or investment or in business, build yourself, build your skill set, build your discipline, build your ability to make good judgment, build your network. And then life has a way of having a snowball effect. It starts snowballing, this thing becomes this thing, and then it compounds and it becomes this thing. And before you know it, it's 30 years and you've built something really massive. And that's the way it is. It happened to me with my relationships. It's happened to me in business. It's happened to me in art collecting. Just learn, read, invest, start, let it snowball.
Was your education purely from Africa, or did you study in London?
Mostly in Africa. I went to university in Nigeria.
Oh, you did? Okay, fine. And then you came and worked in banking over here?
Correct, yes.
What banks? What banks were you?
Royal Bank of Scotland. I worked at Royal Bank of Scotland in the city.
And then you just had this shift where you was like, right, I want to go back now. I want to go and focus on.
Yes. So I still laugh with my friends. Actually, it was a very interesting period. We're all young bankers, make decent money. And at the time, the trend was to buy houses, your maybe second bonus and stuff like that. You get an apartment. And I thought to myself, I didn't want to do that because I thought, okay, house is a great investment, but you tie down my capital, and then you also tie me down in terms of flexibility of moving or starting a business. So that time I took that capital and I started investing it, like my savings from working. And then I said I would work for maybe 5 years. And, I don't know how much I thought I was going to learn in 5 years, but I said I will learn everything I was able to learn, and then I will go and start. And it's funny because the Great Recession then started in 2008. And it was we're at the prime of this, right? So I was like, well, this is as well a good time to start because you're starting from the bottom, right? And that was it. In 2009, I quit and started the journey.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna try and call the market bottom to get started, you couldn't have really chosen a better time to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the stocks that at the time I also bought like stocks like on the AIM and FTSE market. One of the stocks that I got at the time because it was so low. I can't remember what we bought it at 13 pence or something, went as high as £1 and something. It was really exciting. So that also gave a buffer and confidence.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I used to do a lot. I used to do a lot of investing on the AIM market. There's some good opportunities and good companies coming up, but it's an interesting market at this moment in time, and I think there's just a lot of global turmoil in the West and well, Russia, Ukraine,
Absolutely.
Israel.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. I haven't really looked at the in market in a long time. In the early days, I did because I was paying a lot of attention, and there was always this really sweet companies that would just really do 10x, and then they'll
yeah,
go like on the main exchange. And for a while, AIM wasn't producing as many great companies, but I hope that they're able to rethink the strategy because the objective was is key, and to have a platform that has a breeding ground for future superstar companies is a great idea, actually.
do you have? I suppose is the Nigerian stock market? Would you say it's bigger than the AIM market? Would you say it's more established?
Yes, it is. It is. It's similar to. I think it was founded under the similar rules to the London Exchange in itself. Yeah,
Okay,
so it's quite stringent actually. So what we're also talking about here is to have an alternative market where the rules aren't as strict for companies to list, so that you can have more participation from like growth companies. Yeah, but it's a very established market. Yeah.
what would you say the sort of market is weighted towards in Nigeria? Is it sort of like a commodities based, oil based? What sort of sectors would you say it's mainly weighted to?
It's very interesting. It's a huge chunk of it is financial services and banks. The banks are very big. There are a few banks that are quite big. Then we have the industrial and manufacturing sector. Many of them conglomerates, Nestle, Procter and Gamble, PZ Cousins, companies like that have been there for 30, 40, 50 years. Some of them are pre-colonial companies that have evolved, Unilever and stuff like that. So there's that. And then there's the like third bucket of like different types of companies, some tech payments, some insurance, yeah, stuff like that. But the big ones are the old conglomerates and the banks.
Wonder what the I'm just having a quick look. Wonder what the Nigerian Stock Exchange like what the growth has been like. Like a year by year, has it been quite explosive growth? Would you say or not?
Yeah, we've gone through different seasons actually. We've gone through great highs. Before the 2009 8 and 9 bust, it was growing exponentially. After that time, a lot of retail investors were pained, and a lot of them haven't come back into the market. But the younger people are now coming back into the market. We're seeing that we've had some foreign exchange type crisis as well, so that's reduced the number of foreign portfolio investors. Well, we had different cycles, but I think that this year has been a better performing year than probably the last couple of years. Because people are excited about the new government also.
Well, it sounds super exciting, and for me, I love coming onto these podcasts and like hearing a different side of the story. Like I don't hear too much about the Nigerian stock markets and sort of how the investment space is going there, but it sounds very sort of like interesting, like worth exploring, worth digging deeper into the markets and having a look further into that space.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's some real nice gems in Nigeria. There's many of the Nigerian businesses that are great are also private still, and I think they should be encouraged to list on the exchange so that they can create broader communal wealth. But even the companies that we have on the exchange today are quite excited to dip
No,
into.
no, super exciting. Well, I think, do you know what? I think let's wrap it up here. I think absolutely amazing. I think we've left with some awesome pointers and some tips about your journey, what people can take away from this. Is there any sort of last sort of comments you want to say to everyone that's listening?
Nothing newer than what I said. Invest in yourself. That gives confidence. Start, let it snowball, compound it, and then see what happens.
Amazing. And so if anyone wants to follow your journey and find out more information directly about what you're doing, where can they follow you, or where can they watch your journey?
So personally, they can follow me at Adeniyi Adenubi, Adeniyi.Adenubi on Instagram. It's also the same name on LinkedIn. And then the company is called VFD Group. So you can also follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn.
Amazing. Well, honestly, thanks for sharing your journey with us. And I'm really excited to see the future and come out and see you in Nigeria.
That's amazing. Let's make it happen. 2024 would be amazing.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Samuel. Appreciate it.